I think it's important for us to understand where this entire war came from. It did not come from Bashar al-Assad. It came from Washington. There was a decision in 2011 to overthrow Assad. Actually, that came from Jerusalem. This has been a desire of the Israeli government that stretches back more than 25 years. Netanyahu's idea is make the Middle East in Israel's image, overthrow every government that opposes Israel. He's had a friend in that, and that is the CIA and the United States government. So this war in Syria did not come from Assad's repression. It did not come from Assad's dictatorship. This war came from a presidential order by Obama to overthrow Assad, starting in the spring of 2011. We have a name for this program. It was Operation Timber Sycamore. The United States, together with other countries in this region, trained fighters, especially jihadists, including the ones that just took power, to overthrow the regime. This created chaos. 600,000 dead in Syria in a war that has gone on for 14 years. The outcome of this war is what the CIA wanted back in 2011, which is that a jihad group would take power in Syria after being armed by the United States. The Syrian war is just one of 6 wars that Israel has promoted, including in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia, and Sudan. We had the list, actually, from Wesley Clark back in 2001 when he was handed a paper in the Pentagon that the goal was 7 wars in 5 years. The only war that hasn't taken place yet, to Netanyahu's great consternation, is the US war with Iran, which Israel is still trying to instigate to this very day.
Scam. It's all a lie. That the word terrorist is completely meaningless. One guy's terrorist is the next guy's freedom fighter, is the next guy's hero, is the next guy's guest in the White House. I hope this is a punch in everyone's face, that this has all been a lie, and that we don't have to go along with this anymore. We don't have to go along with their lies. That we could just focus on America, focus on building our country, focus on American citizens, rather than demonizing American citizens and saying they're just a bunch of lazy freeloaders. Maybe we should start trying to lift each other up, better each other, better our country. And just the first step in that, I think, is not believing these lying sack of leaders who just spit in the face of all of those men and women who signed up for the U.S. military after 9/11, ended up going and fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, only to have the leader of Al-Qaeda sitting in the White House shaking Trump's hand and being given a country. Here you go. Here's your reward. Good job. Good job. You tough guy. Okay. Tonight, we're going to be talking to Kevork Almassian. He's the founder of Syriana Analysis, one of the few voices who's been telling the truth about what really happened in Syria from day one. Remember when Western media told us the uprisings in Syria were all about freedom and democracy? Well, it turns out the people who actually took power were radical Islamists, Al-Qaeda. Women are now oppressed, minorities are persecuted, and ordinary Syrians are worse off than ever. We're going to break down what Syrians were promised back in 2011, why so many were fooled into thinking Assad was the problem, and how Israel played both sides, backing al-Golani's fighters while later pretending to fight them in the name of protecting the Druze. They create the chaos, then they swoop in and act like they're heroes. This is one of the most insane geopolitical U-turns I have ever seen, and it exposes everything wrong with U.S. foreign policy. Kevork Almassian, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me again.
I want to go back in time on this so that we can all kind of understand a little bit more context of the significance of what is this guy's name now? What is he calling himself?
Ahmad al-Shara now.
What was it before Al-Golani?
Abu Muhammad al-Jolani.
Al-Jolani, right, okay. $10 million bounty on his head at one point by the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. Now he's sitting in the White House. Yes. I want to go back in time. Let's go back to when you were in Syria, before you had left, before all of the wave of refugees left Syria, many of them to Germany, millions. How many people have left Syria at this point?
So we have around 7 million internally displaced people and 5 million refugees.
Okay.
So we're talking about half the country. Of 24 million, 12 million are either internally displaced or refugees all around the world.
So when this all started, what year would you say it started? 2014?
This was in March. It was in March 2011 when the first demonstrations started against the former government, and I've seen multiple of these demonstrations in Syria. And it was quite clear from the beginning that the nature of the demonstrations were not like people were not calling for democracy. Yes, some people were saying, we want freedom. But when you ask them, what do you want? Seriously, one of the first demands of these demonstrators was that when they go into police station, they occupy it, they go to the balcony and they say, our first demand is we want to close the mixed gender schools in Syria. We no longer want for women and men to interact. And the second demand is we want for women who wear burqa to be able to teach our children, because in Syria, under the secular government, people were free to wear a burqa, a niqab, a hijab, or whatever they like. But if you want to teach a kid at school, this kid has to see the face of the teacher so they can interact together. So that was the point of making a law that whoever is teaching cannot basically come to school completely, let's say, covered, because one of the main elements of teaching is that this kid can interact with the teacher and learn from this interaction. It's a social and human interaction. So those were the first demands. And of course, we have the regional countries, they have formed political bodies for this opposition, mainly in Turkey, in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, in regional countries. And they promoted this as a democratic revolution against a dictator, Assad. And we have to be honest with our audience, Syria was not a democracy. It was a political authoritarianism in a region where almost everyone is political authoritarian. It's not like Syria was the exception for the rule in the region. Syria was more progressive than neighboring countries because it imposed a secular government. And for your respected audience to understand, secularism in Syria means that the religion cannot play a role in politics. That's it. Religion, keep it in the mosque, keep it in the church, keep it in the synagogue. That's it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, all people are free to practice their religious rituals. So they wanted to change that. They wanted to create more theocratical country, not a democracy. That was the smokescreen. That was the masking. And the evidence of it is in front of our eyes. When I said that this is a non-democratic regressive revolution, people said Kevork is an Assadist. He is repeating Assadist talking points. But now we have clear-cut evidence that the person who is now the self-selected president of Syria, he didn't come with elections. He just appointed himself a president of the country, and he is the leader of the Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria between 2011 and 2017. In 2017, he rebranded himself and said, I no longer play part in Al-Qaeda and I wanted to become a reformed rebel. But the truth of the matter is, this was a PR move in order for him to get more international legitimacy, because nobody would like to bring someone who is still part of Al-Qaeda into power in Syria. And he was the strongest force on the ground. And let's remember, Kim, if you're in Syria and you want to oust the former regime, and the former regime is a secular regime, you will not be able, as, let's say, outside intelligence secret services, to come and convince, let's say, the secularists or the left wings or the nationalists or the pan-Arabists to carry arms and fight against the government. This is how they see the government should be anyways. So the people who had the most bitterness against the former regime were the Islamists. Mm-hmm. The people who would like to establish an Islamic state in the country, right? In their own understanding of whatever is this Islamic state. So in my opinion, the American planners here, they knew very well that the driving force behind the insurgency in Syria were the Islamists, but those were the options they had. They didn't have, let's say, some revolutionary figures in Syria to give them weapons. Those were the people ready to die for a cause. So they supported the people of Golani and many other people like Golani, and now they're in power. And after he comes to power, the first thing he does is he says, look, we ran on the platform and said we want to establish an Islamic state and we will march into Jerusalem, we will liberate Palestine and all these things. But once he comes to power, he says, now I want to do a U-turn. Because now I'm a reformed person, I'm a civilized person, I no longer want to liberate Palestine. In the contrary, I would like to normalize ties with Israel, and says to Israel that, look, Habibis, we're not going to attack you. We're friends. And he says, we share mutual enemies to Israel. And you don't need to be a philosopher to understand who are the mutual enemies, and those are Iran and Hezbollah. Because he's telling Israel, we have mutual interests, we can cooperate. And accordingly, I would like to open up with the US, and the US will broker this deal between me and you. And this is what Golani said yesterday on Fox News. He said, I hope that Donald Trump would help me reach a deal with Israel. But let's be serious. Donald Trump is not some neutral broker for a deal between Syria and Israel. Donald Trump is a pro-Israel, pro-Zionist president.
Yeah.
And he recognized a few years ago during his first presidency, the Golan Heights as sovereign Israeli territories. So how is he going to ask Donald Trump to be a neutral broker in this case? It's just beyond me, because unfortunately, whatever you say nowadays is too late. Syria has been fractured. Syria is completely destroyed. Half the country is between refugees and internally displaced. The economy is completely destroyed. And whoever is going to fill this vacuum on the ground are going to be these Islamists. But on a higher level, when we speak about the economy, for example, the foreign corporations will come and they will rebuild the country. It's a $200 to $300 billion investment. They will make hell of a money out of Syria. But the people need to understand that the Syrians will not benefit much from this, because this is the economic hitman formula, that Syria had almost zero external debt before the war. And now it has over 300 billion debt because of the reconstruction, right, that they need. So they will have to get loans from where? From the IMF. And that's why Golani met with her name is Georgina or something, the head of the IMF. And she called him, Mr. President. It's like I'm watching some surreal movie. The head of the IMF is happy to receive Golani because they want to give him loans. And these loans are politically conditioned. But these loans are like a chain in the neck of Syria, because for decades, Syria will not be able to pay the debt.
Right. When you were in Syria at that time, and all the people were there before they started fleeing, and the U.S. was clearly backing anybody other than Bashar al-Assad, right? I mean, it was very clear the United States wanted Assad gone.
Yeah.
What was the message they sold? I mean, you were there on the ground. You were talking to these dissidents, but the dissidents were wanting an Islamic caliphate, basically, to be marched in. But what was being sold, and did the majority of Syrians buy what was being sold, which is democracy and freedom, and Bashar al-Assad is this brutal dictator, and what were they told to go along with it? What were people told was going to be the outcome? What was going to be the beautiful new Syria that they were going to be gaining after the United States and others oust Assad?
I would say something, Kim, and I really don't want to sound arrogant in this, but I truly think that nobody can claim to be an expert on the Middle East or Syria if this person doesn't speak Arabic or follows the Arabic media outlets. Because what we hear in the Western mainstream press is something, but what we watch in Arabic media outlet is completely something else. And in my opinion, the Americans and the Brits, they are very, very good in psychological operations, whether in their own countries or in the outside world. And accordingly, they have tasked several media outlets in the region because they are owned by their governments. For example, Al Jazeera Arabic. For example, it belongs to Qatar. They task Al Arabiya Arabic, which belongs to Saudi Arabia, and many other mini outlets that spawned after the Syrian war on social media platforms, short videos, etc. And the vast majority of these outlets were propagandizing the people that once Assad is gone, you will get the utopia. Everything you wish for, all those are rivers of honey, everywhere. This is how they spoke about this war. But on a higher level, because they need fighters, right? You need fighters to go to Syria. And I would like to argue and say, had they had enough popular support in Syria, they wouldn't have needed tens of thousands of multinational jihadists from all around the world. If the Syrians said, we want to get rid of Assad, and we are the majority, right? If they were the majority, Assad would have gone in 2011. But because they didn't have much popular support, they had to turn this through these media outlets in the region into a sectarian or holy war. So copying the Afghanistan formula in order to bring these brainless Takfiri jihadists from all around the world, you have to declare a holy war against an infidel secular regime. So you have tens of thousands of multinational jihadists coming to Syria because they want to wage a holy war against Assad. And these countries include, of course, from Europe, from Central Asia, from Chechnya, from Saudi Arabia, from the Arab world. But this was not possible without the indoctrination, without the encouragement, without the routes. Like they opened the logistics, they opened the borders, the airports for the people, and salaries. Because there is no one who would like to come from Kazakhstan or from Chechnya or from Xinjiang, from the Uyghurs to Syria and fight for free. Like, how would they survive? So there is someone paying for their money. Somebody is propagandizing the people. And on a more local level, many Syrian people, unfortunately speaking, they were also propagandized. And imagine the level of absurdity. Like, if you're an American, if, God forbidden, in the future, there was a scenario under which you see clearly as a critical thinker that your country is demising, your country is dying, and there was the last straw that somebody came and hit your country and you see it's bleeding and it's going to die, you're not going to celebrate in the streets, right? You're going to say, people, what are we doing? I mean, put politics aside, maybe we hate our government, but we don't want to kill our nation, right? We have opposition to the politics of the government, but we object destroying our infrastructure. Like, if I told you, Kim, I give you money, you have to go and destroy the air defenses in your country, would you do that? You wouldn't do that, because although you oppose your government, you will not destroy your country's capabilities or your country's infrastructure, the electrical generators, the water dams, the the oil fields, for example, the gas fields, right? Mm-hmm. But these brainwashed people, including Syrians, one of the first things they did, they had maps of the air defenses of Syria. They destroyed the air defenses of the country. So what I'm trying to say is, although some people had grievances against the government, they couldn't differentiate between the state, that even if Assad is gone, those are state assets that they have to preserve, and the government itself. So they rose against the state, but not against the government of the former government. And that's why you saw Israel having air superiority against Syria during the past decade and bombing Syria regularly, because most of the time, every time Syrian army is fighting against some of these groups, they're like cherry picking the radars, the air defenses, the strategic assets of the country. And after all, also taking over the oil fields, right? So this is what I say, a very orchestrated and structured destruction of the Syrian state, but not the regime. Because now the regime is gone. But have we built a democratic regime? No. Which means we replaced a political authoritarianism, which gives the people social and religious rights and economic rights, with a more religious, more regressive, theocratic authoritarianism. So we didn't even upgrade the system. And plus, we don't have state, because now, without foreign investors, we will not be able to generate electricity, although the country has oil. How is that possible? Because the Americans occupy the oil fields. So they come and say, we will give you electricity 24/24, but you will buy gas from Azerbaijan. And if Azerbaijan brings gas to the country, now the people look at the bills and they say, what is this? I used to pay, let's say, $10 per month for my electricity bill, and now $100. How is that even possible? Like our salaries didn't increase, but the prices increased, skyrocketed. And the reason for it is because now they no longer have national economy. They are getting their services from the outside. So Syria moved from a country which can produce and export into a country that is dependent on outside investment. And this is what happened in Yugoslavia. Like what they did in Yugoslavia is just the sheer destruction of the state and its economy, because national economies or sovereign economies are intolerable under the still unipolar world. As long as you have a unipolar world and the dollar dependency, it is not allowed for countries to develop outside the dollar system. It's not allowed for the countries to develop outside the manufacturing and technological capacities of the West. If you try to do it by yourself, you will be punished. So that was the sin, in my opinion, of Syria.
What is it like for women and others, minority groups today in Syria? When the what was sold was it's going to be a democracy and freedom. And what I'm seeing from my perspective, you would know a lot better than I do, but what I'm seeing is that the women are now it's more repressive for women. It's more repressive for religious minorities, that it is not a free country anymore, but instead people are essentially living under Sharia law. And, all the things that the U.S. Speaks up against, like, oh no, the Islamists are coming and Sharia law, and we have to stop Hamas because Hamas is these, these terrible Islamists. And now they've got an Al-Qaeda guy in power in Syria. They're cheering this on. This is a guy who killed Americans. He fought for Al-Qaeda against Americans. And they're cheering him on. They're not just cheering him on. They're welcoming him at the White House. Clearly, though, things look worse for a lot of people. But what also is interesting to me is a lot of people are coming back to Syria. So why, with it being more, what is it like? Is it more repressive, really, today in Syria under Golani? Or is it, and if it is, why are so many coming back to Syria? And are these the people that fled to Germany? And we've had this conversation before, that a lot of them, a lot of the the people that fled to Germany, they didn't assimilate, right? They still wanted their Islamic traditions and they didn't assimilate to Germany. Are these the ones going back because they're thinking, wow, great, we wanted this type of Sharia law. We wanted this type of kind of Islamic caliphate sort of setup, and now we've got something kind of like that, so we'll go back. I mean, what's happening with that?
I follow local media outlets, and I also follow activists in Germany. And nowadays there is a big hysteria here in Germany because many people receiving deportation letters from the government telling them you have what is called here subsidiary protection. It's not a refugee status. And your country is safe for you since you are, they write in the letter, they say you are a Muslim, Arab, Sunni. This is how they characterize it. So you have your freedom now. You can go to your country. And many people are upset because they don't want to go back to Syria. They think that the country's economy is not functioning well, so they don't have job opportunities. And it's that way. It's true. Whoever wants to go back to Syria nowadays will not have a better life than in Germany. That's true. Mm-hmm. They're also sending deportation letters even for people who work in Germany. Like they are doctors and engineers, and those are really having jobs here and learn the language and integrated. And they're receiving deportation letters from the government because they're telling them you have this subsidiary protection and you could go back to your country. So they're not differentiating based on your education or career or if you're working or not. But there are some people, for example, the people who returned from Germany to Syria voluntarily are below 30,000. So you're speaking of 1,050,000 Syrians around, and the regime change happened around a year ago, and during this time, around 30,000 people returned voluntarily to Syria. That's a very, very small number. And I'm also watching videos of people saying, I returned to Syria and I regret it big time. Don't go back. Don't come back to Syria. Don't do it. Now, as for women, but I want to say one thing about this, about the refugee thing, because it's a very sensitive issue. And I've been accused in the past of being an anti-refugee person, although I was myself a refugee in Germany. I have never been against the refugees. All I said is most people who came from Syria as refugees to Germany, they either support the Islamists, in my experience, this is my subjective opinion, or they are Islamists. And it turned out to be true. Like, people do support Golani from Germany. So if the criteria would be applied, the German government criteria would be applied on everyone fairly, because in 2011, 2022, the government said, if you are not with the revolution in Syria, then you could go back. Assad is in power, and we would like to deport you, right, to Syria. If that criteria would be fairly applied, then the vast majority of the Syrians would be deported nowadays from Germany, because now the regime has changed, and now it is Golani in power and no longer Assad, if we will apply that fairly. But the situation of women is the following. So there are no laws adopted yet in Syria that institutionally suppressing or oppressing women yet. But what they do basically is this peer social pressure. So when they see a woman who is not dressed well in their mind, they harass them in the streets, or they stand. The supporters of Golani stand in front of a restaurant where there is a party and people are going there. And if they see a woman who is wearing, let's say, a miniskirt or something, they go crazy. They start insulting this woman so that they would behave, right? But the worst thing happening in Syria is not these small details. The worst thing is the kidnappings of women. And mostly among the Alawite community in the coastal cities of Syria. So a woman wakes up and would like to go for a grocery shop, would like to go to school, would like to go to work, and leave their apartment, and they never come back. And there are tens of such cases in Syria. The government, Golani government says that these women are not kidnapped. They just escaped with their secret lovers. And I wanna explain this because this is for an American audience, probably this would be, maybe somebody loves someone and they escape. But if you are a woman and you are part of the Alawite community, the Alawites are way more progressive in their lifestyle, and the women do not cover. The women are treated very respectfully, for example. No woman would downgrade herself so much and run away with a jihadist from the Alawite community. It's like, sorry to say, but they're not hit in the brain to leave their home and go into Idlib, the largest safe haven of Al-Qaeda terrorists in the world, and marry, let's say, a Chechen jihadist. That's ridiculous to the maximum level. But this is what the regime says nowadays or claims. So we have the kidnappings of Alawite women. We have the kidnapping of Druze women in Asweda, in addition to the sexual abuse and rapings, which happened consistently and systematically against many women, including on video in Sweda against the Druze women, because in their opinion, when there is a war between the Golani regime, which they consider themselves as Islamic army, this is how they see it, right? I'm talking in how they perceive these things. Mm-hmm. So when they go into a city, and this city, let's say, is overwhelmingly Alawite or Christian or Druze, and if there is a war, if there is a resistance against them, they will consider in the entire community in an act of war against them. And when there is an act of war, and if you defeat your enemy, their women are permissible to you. So you can take their women and go back as sex slaves. So this is how they think. And this is what they have done in Asweda, including there is a video that one of the activists has shown to Tom Barak himself, telling him, look what they are doing to the women in our country. This is how they're raping our women. This person showed Tom Barak the rape video, and he was so touched by it. But Tom Barak doesn't take decisions based on his personal emotions. He is taking decisions based on what the regional countries want. Tom Barak is not simply an envoy of the United States to the region. He is a great regional asset. He has big business investments and interests in Qatar, in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in Turkey. And these countries are telling Tom Barak that we can handle Golani. Let him in power, give him centralized powers, and because Golani is a paper tiger, right? Like, he doesn't have an army to fight against Israel or any regional power. He only can fight against unarmed civilians. Mm-hmm. So accordingly, if Golani doesn't pose a threat to anyone in the region except for the population in Syria, they say we can manage this crisis in Syria. And because Donald Trump doesn't want to deal much with Syria, doesn't think Syria is so important for him, he has bigger things to think like Iran, China, Russia. So he wants to hand over the file of Syria to these regional countries. And those are these countries which I mentioned, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Turkey. But there is a conflict between what these regional countries want and what Israel wants. Mm. Israel wants for Golani to stay in power, but exclusively in what they see Sunni dominated areas. And this means from the borders with Turkey, we're talking about Aleppo, Idlib, Hama, Homs, Damascus. But beyond that, Israel doesn't want for Golani to rule over certain areas, not out of love for the minority communities, but because they want to expand inside Syria. They want to have more leverage inside Syria. And that's why when Golani attacked against the Druze in Asweda, Israel intervened and bombed some of the convoys of Golani, presenting itself as a savior for the Druze community or minority in the country. And this has reflected on the Druze community. Now we see Israeli flags in Asweda. People say 4,000 of our people were massacred in few days. Our women were raped. When the Golani regime came, they asked us, are you a Muslim or are you not a Muslim? And they started executing us in the streets. We have no one protecting us. And when Israel comes, we will accept anything, because at gunpoint, people prefer survival. Right. But the trap here is Israel helped Golani come to power. Israel made Golani's ascendance to power possible in the past decade. Israel attacked Golani forces 0 times. And when they occupied the border crossing between Syria and the Golan Heights, which is now in the hands of Israel, the Golani forces between 2014 and 2015, and when the Syrian army started shooting on the Golani forces, when they get injured, they go to Israel and receive medical treatment inside Israeli field hospitals, their leadership got cash from Israel and ammunition and weapons. So Israel helped the Golani forces in the past and also helped it indirectly through attacking the former Syrian army over 2,000 times. Imagine you have a conflict in a country. Israel is bombing 2,000 times the parties that are fighting against these terrorists.
Yeah.
So what Israel is basically doing is diminishing the strength of the parties fighting against Golani, right? And now that Golani comes to power, they say, he's a terrorist, he's this and that. They're so dishonest about this that they helped him come to power.
Well, they're still helping him. I mean, they're still helping him. Trump has even said during these meetings that, I've been dropping sanctions on Syria at the request of Israel. Israel's the one that's been wanting Syria to be embraced by the US, to be embraced by the IMF, to do all. I mean, so Israel's still helping him.
In July last year, when Netanyahu visited the US for the 1,000th times last year, Trump said this also directly to his face. He said, we lifted the sanctions on the request of regional countries, including Israel and Turkey. And Bibi Netanyahu was sitting there and he didn't say, no, this is incorrect. We didn't ask, or we didn't request these things. And he didn't follow up on it, let's say, after he returned to Israel. He didn't deny these allegations. Bibi Netanyahu also took credit of ousting Assad. He said, by assassinating Nasrallah, this had a big impact on Syria because Hezbollah used to also support Syria during the peak of the conflict in the country. So, and in addition to that, when Iranians tried to bring the squadron from Iran to support Assad during this last Golani offensive, Israeli fighter jets flew to Iraq and they blocked the Iranian Air Force from supporting Assad. So Israel played a direct role in bringing Golani, in my opinion, into power. And now all this fake outrage about Golani by people like Laura Loomer and others who say, oh, he's an ISIS, he's a terrorist, he's this and that. She's correct. She's correct. He is a terrorist. But let's talk about how Golani became the leader of Syria and who helped him and supported him all this during this time. And by ousting Assad, of course, the strongest force will replace him. And on the ground, the strongest force was Golani. And it turned out that the Israelis see Golani as very beneficial because his army are very radicalized, let's say, Al-Qaeda mindset. And once you have the state governed by Al-Qaeda mindset, all the other ethnicities, religions, sects will say, we cannot coexist with such a mentality. So everybody goes into their cantons. Everybody starts thinking narrow. So you destroy the national identity of Syria. So nowadays, nobody in Syria identifies himself or herself as a Syrian. And we had this for 53 years under the Baas Party, the Pan-Arabist country. You're Syrian. Yes, I'm Syrian and I'm Armenian. I'm ethnic Armenian, but I'm Syrian. I am Shia, but I'm Syrian. I'm an Alawi, but I'm Syrian. I'm Sunni, but I'm... Nowadays, everybody identifies himself or herself in the sub-identity, these mini-identities. And this creates vertical rifts in the country and helps in the Balconization. Because people think, because when we say the end goal is Balconization of Syria, people think that this is just going to be like Yugoslavia, everybody is divided, like borders are divided. No, the Balconization is here. Like if I am, let's say, Christian, and I believe, let's say, that the Muslims are the worst in the world and I cannot coexist with them, I already balkanized myself. I isolated myself from the rest, right? And this is what they have done in the country. Everybody goes into their cantons nowadays.
So it's like a divide and conquer. What do you think Israel's main goal is? What do they envision for the future for Syria?
They envision a decentralized Syria, under which every ethnicity, sect has its own regions. So they could have this opportunity, as you mentioned, divide and conquer. But they have a more strategic vision for Syria. What they really aspire is the Golan Heights is gone. They will not give that back. And they have also occupied the highest hill in Syria after ousting Assad. It's called Mount Hermon. And whoever controls Mount Hermon, they control Damascus. Militarily, Damascus is fallen in the hands of the Israelis, because Mount Hermon, you can shoot on Damascus now from Mount Hermon with a howitzer. It's 20 kilometers. It's nothing. It's the highest hill in the region. So the Israelis, by occupying that, they already have a military superiority over Damascus. But what they want to do is, this is what they're discussing with the Americans, that they want to open what they call humanitarian corridor between the Golan Heights all the way to the governorate of Sweda, where the Druze community live. So they want to open this corridor so they have an access between the Golan Heights into that region and accordingly leverage over that region. And from Sweda, they want to open another corridor to the eastern shore and bank of the Euphrates, where the Kurds live. So this is, if you put the Greater Israel map in front of you, maybe they cannot achieve the Greater Israel project like the way it is practically, but they could have spheres of influence inside Syria that could help them in the future achieve the Greater Israel project. And unfortunately, this is something very important. The narratives changed in Syria. Like before the regime change, people who stood with Assad, they were unquestionably doubtful, let's say, the least to say, of Israel. They all saw Israel as a destabilizing force. Now they have a different enemy, and that is Golani. And once Golani comes closer to their communities, they go closer to Israel, because the only regional power in the region waging or pretending to care about the minorities is Israel. But this is, again, a psychological warfare that they have played very carefully. And I said this on my stream. I said, Israelis are mastermind in planning. Do not underestimate the Israelis. Do not underestimate their psychological operations. Do not underestimate their spying techniques. I mean, if the former head of Mossad, his name is Yossi Cohen, brags on a podcast and says, we compromised electronics all over the world, which means putting explosives inside our smartphones, like pagers or spying equipment. I'm terrified, to be honest with you. And I think nobody should make fun of what they are capable of doing, because they have the imagination and they are executing their vision in the region.
Yeah. So it sounds like what they did when it comes to these communities in Syria that they're now bringing under their wing and saying, see, we're the heroes, is they basically, it would be like as if someone hired someone to come into my house, rob me, beat me up, you know, all these terrible things. They paid this person to come in and do this. They hired them, and then they rush in and pretend like they're my hero. And then that way I could say, wow, you are the one who saved me. I'm forever indebted to you. I'm forever... I'd rather live under your protection. Go ahead and take this area that we're living on. We want to be Israeli, right? I mean, we want to be with you. And it sounds like that's their plan. And it is a smart plan to basically just rush in and act like we're the hero, but in actuality, we were the ones who hired the guy to come in and harm you.
Yeah, it's like create a problem and offer a solution to the people.
Yeah,
you
right.
hold both cards in your hands. And I know this for a fact that after the regime change in Syria, Israel hired many influencers on social media platforms to push this narrative. And they pay people a fraction of the money compared to what they pay to American influencers, right? Like this is not the 7,000 club. They pay them fraction of the money compared to that. But many people were approached by Israelis. Those are Syrians, including myself. And I said this on Clayton's show yesterday. They pretend, or this person pretends to be just a private person, Israeli private person. And he says, I'm a very rich person. I would like to support your work. You could become very influential. We can boost your content, this and that. The only thing they would like you to do is, because I'm Syrian, Christian of Armenian descent, and very influential among Syrian, let's say, minority groups. So they would like to use my platform, in my opinion, to promote that idea. And I'm not playing their games. I'm not falling into that. And I know that what Israel has done in the past, I'm not going to stand in the way of the people who are drowning in the water and somebody is telling them, I'm going to save you. But I am not going to play that game. Yeah. Because I said to the people for a long time, guys, if the regime is gone, the country will be Balkanized. So now that Israel would like to continue the Balkanization of Syria, I'm not going to play any role in that. And especially that after what we saw in Gaza, how can anybody trust the genuinity, let's say, or the honesty of any Israeli PR firm or Israeli government linked outlets, let's say, after what we saw of daily barbarity? Like, I don't think any person with humanity should accept such offers, period. Yeah. I think the Israelis should really first put a mirror in front of them and see what they did in the past 2 years, how they horrified the world. Don't look into the media. If you ask any ordinary citizen anywhere around the world, everybody was horrified by what happened. And what they have normalized is basically killing civilians on a mass scale, televised on our smartphones. That's a new level, of warfare that we haven't seen in the past decades after World War II. And once you normalize such warfares, it will be repeated. That's why I say there has to be serious debate inside Israel, a reform inside Israel, ideological reform, educational reform, because they keep talking about de-radicalizing the Palestinians. Excuse me? It's like you officials on TV saying that those are Amaleks and we will eliminate them and there is no innocent people in Gaza. We will nuke them. We will do this and that. No, you have to really do some self-reflection first and understand how we feel about you after normalizing this type of killing in the past few years. And after that, when there is a new mentality and that is not based on this really radical Zionism, whatever that region is named, whether it's Palestine, whether it is Israel, whether it is Nowherestan, it doesn't matter. What matters is the type of governance there. If there is a government in Israel, let's say because they are going to occupy or planning on occupying all Palestine, if there is a different type of governance which gives the Palestinians equal rights, everybody is equal, right? That's the end goal that I envision, that everybody is equal in front of the law in Palestine. And if that happens, Israel already crumbled. Because the idea of Israel of discriminating against other people, that's the driving force behind this ideology of Zionism. And I think we really have to have a serious talk about that.
Kevork, thank you so much for being here and giving us your insight into this. It has just been jaw-dropping to see Golani at the White House meeting with all of this guy killed Americans. It's just the most jaw-dropping, mind-blowing turn of events that we spent as Americans decades in the war on terror and trillions of dollars in American lives marching into Iraq and Afghanistan saying that we were going to defeat Al-Qaeda. And that's what they told us over and over and over again. We are going to defeat Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda was, for the longest time, enemy number one. Al-Qaeda is who did 9/11. Al-Qaeda was our enemy. Al-Qaeda this, Al-Qaeda that. And now we have the literal leader of Al-Qaeda now shaking hands, sitting in the White House, shaking hands with Americans as they smile. A guy who actually killed Americans. I mean, he had threats. He had sent threats against America. I mean, this guy, and yet, you know, at the same time, you've got our administration sitting there saying, well, we have to stop Iran because Iran says death to America. I mean, Iran chants death to America, and they're a bunch of Islamist jihadists, and they're literally shaking hand with an Islamist jihadist who chanted death to America, but did more than just said death to America. He actually killed Americans. You can't, Iran has not killed any Americans. This guy's killed Americans, and he's sitting there. I mean, it's just the most mind-blowing thing.
And Iran is the antidote of Al-Qaeda, by the way. Like they invested a lot in the past 15 years to fight against Al-Qaeda in Syria and ISIS, Hezbollah as well. But those are the enemies of Israel and the United States. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and they're supporting this type of goals. But imagine you were an American soldier and you went to Afghanistan to fight against Al-Qaeda, and now your president shaking hands with the leader of Al-Qaeda.
The guy who killed your buddy. I mean, that's what we're seeing. The guy who killed your buddy on the battlefield is now shaking hands with the U.S. president and sitting in the White House. And all the Americans, all of us, after 9/11, when we were told Al-Qaeda this, Al-Qaeda is the number one enemy, we're going over there to defeat Al-Qaeda. And now we've literally handed an entire country to Al-Qaeda as their reward for being good soldiers. Apparently, it's just really mind-blowing, totally mind-blowing. But it's good to get your perspective on this. I wanted to kind of see, you know, exactly what was going on in Syria, what the goal was of what they originally tried to sell people, because here we are today, you know, why there are women and people returning, and also the goal of Israel. What is it that they're trying to accomplish in this? And I think you answered those questions really well. So I really appreciate it. Where can people, you do a daily show. Is it daily? It is daily, isn't it?
It is between Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern American time on my YouTube channel of Syriana Analysis. And I want to thank you so much really for this opportunity. And I want to mention very good thing happened last time I was on your show. One of the viewers of your show, Neil Oliver, he found me on your channel and he added me on X, and we became friends, and he is such a lovely person. So I thank you double for introducing me to Neil, such a sweet person.
He is a very, very great, great human. So Kevork, thank you again. We do have the link down below to your channel. I do recommend that people follow you and watch your channel, your live streams. You do a great show. I do get a lot of information from you watching your show, so I definitely highly recommend it. Oh, and congratulations on hitting 100,000 subscribers. I saw that.
Thank you. Finally.
Very cool. Yes. You know what? But it's only upward and onward from here, Kevork. Thank you so much again.